Hello, and welcome to our post-show talkback after today's performance of Dog Sees God by Bert V. Royal, presented by SUNY Oswego Theater. My name is Rachel, and I will be your host today. I worked as one of the dramaturgs on this production. For those who don't know what that is, dramaturgs offer insight and research into the historical context behind the show. Today will be a short conversation to give insight into the world of the play. If you have a specific question, add them to the chat, and we will try to answer them for you. Joining me today are two student artists whose work you have enjoyed today. Can I ask you to introduce yourselves?
I'm Anastasia West. I play CV's sister.
And I'm Matthew Georgiadis, and I'm the live stream producer.
Okay, thank you. First off, congratulations on the show. It turned out great. Online theater has definitely provided its source of interesting sort of hurdles. What would you say were some of those hurdles, and what steps did you take to sort of overcome them and put on your best performance or your best work?
I could answer that one. As an actor, it was super difficult to connect with people that you've never acted face to face with. So a lot of us would kind of get together, socially distance, of course, and work on our one-on-one scenes before rehearsal and stuff, and that kind of helped a lot, connecting over the computer. Yeah.
For me, it was learning a whole new set of skills. I'm an audio person, but now all of a sudden I'm learning video, and not just video, but streaming as well, and how to make everyone's boxes move around. So I think the biggest challenge was just the learning curve of all this new technology and figuring out, okay, what's going to work best for the show and how can we make it look visually pleasing as possible.
Learning all of this new stuff must have been challenging. Do you think that the stuff that you've learned throughout this pandemic regarding the theater is going to help you in future endeavors? And if so, how?
For sure. There's so many different opportunities too. There's streaming is a very popular art form these days. So, that could be a potential moving forward. I can continue working on live streams. I have an internship with the Oswego players that we're doing live streams, and all of this builds to be a what's the sentence? It builds to be a potential career.
I could piggyback off of that. I personally found that seeing myself recorded makes me more self-aware as an actor, because I'm a theater actor and theater doesn't get recorded. So to have a product to look at was very interesting and very made me self-aware.
Now, this show deals with plenty of topics that aren't typically talked about or just heavier in general. What were some of the steps that you took to make sure you portrayed them in a way that was sort of respectful or just easier on you as an actor, just to get in the proper mindset to deal with something as heavy as this?
Well, I think a lot of that could be based upon research with the awesome Dramaturgy Hub and getting the context for that stuff was really helpful, and also just being in a non-hostile rehearsal environment was really helpful, because it felt all the actors were kind of just able to create a conversation around the issues and felt comfortable exposing their own personal not flaws, but experiences in using it in the show.
That's great. What were some of the parts of the show that you thought you did well? This is for either of you. What were some of your favorite parts working on it?
I think my favorite part was getting the animations between different scenes and exits and entrances. I had to custom build a lot of those and using a plugin, a transition plugin, by setting it up and specifying, okay, how long is this scene? I got to make this box move that way and leave all the other boxes where they were. So you got to go and program all of that, which it's not so much that it takes time, but it takes knowledge of figuring out, okay, how does the animations work in this program? How can I do this? And how can I use it to do cool things? So that was a lot of fun. And I'm really happy with how those turned out.
What was it like portraying these iconic characters?
Oh, it was a lot. I did a lot of research into the Peanuts before doing the show, so it felt like kind of like an expectation was put upon me and the other actors to kind of like accurately depict their adolescence. And I personally, it took me a sec to get there because as CB sister, I had like all these costume changes and all these wigs and stuff that they saw on the show. And before that, it was kind of difficult, but once I got like the typical blonde wig and all the like outfits and stuff, it proved to be a lot more like easier to connect with the character. I thought that was pretty cool.
Do you think that it was easier to portray the characters since they don't follow the names that they were given in the original Peanuts comics?
Oh, 100%, yeah. I actually remember I got my props the day that we all got our props in like bags, and it said Sally on it, and I was like, I feel like this is wrong. Like it just felt strange because they aren't their Peanuts characters, and that was like another layer of like the awesome playwriting in that piece.
For Matt, this was a pre-recorded production, but that wasn't always the plan, was it?
No, it was not. What happened is we tried to push the computer too hard and it just was not having it. So unfortunately, we had to go pre-recorded, but everything that you saw was what we were planning to do live. What we did is we literally just recorded live, and if the computer was having struggles, we just took it from the top of the scene and continued on. So I think, yes, it was pre-recorded, but at the same time, it's still live to us, which I think is really helpful for the actors to not feel like it was like doing chunk. We did have to jump around a little bit for some other reasons, but overall, we mostly went in order.
Do you think that having the idea that it was going to be live streamed throughout the rehearsal process helped? If so, what ways do you think it helped the overall performance?
I think it really made everything a lot more immediate. And I know a lot of the actors were pretty apprehensive and scared about doing it live. So we had kind of like prepared ourselves in a very specific way, or like complex. Like it felt like we all were like really ready to do it live, and like by the end of rehearsal, when we found out it wasn't going to be live, it was like, oh, okay. Well, now we're all like super ready to do it pre-recorded. Yeah.
Mhm.
This is the Blackfriars student production. What was a distinctive part of our program, as nearly all creative roles are taken on by students? What was the process like compared to other productions that you've worked on? Did you feel like it was like working with, say, the student director? Do you think that it was a different just environment or something? Like, how was it?
Yeah, I can speak to this a bit. I think it is a bit of a different environment. It is, we all have a professor as our mentor, which is great, but overall, it's the students who are making the artistic decisions and the creative decisions. Like, I was like, hey, I want to use this set of software and do this for the show. And they said, okay. And they helped me create this, technologically get the equipment all there and ready to go. And I thank them very much for being supportive. But it was like, for me, it was like I was the designer and the engineer for this show live stream, and it was a lot more independent than if I was just like, okay, here's your show, you're gonna hit cues. It's like I'm a designer for this show, and that opportunity I think is really great for students and everyone.
So we have a few nice things from the chat. M. Asahina says, great show. Cried so much, guys. Beautiful work as always. And Mr. Jones also says that they thought it was a great show. So once again, congrats on everything that you've worked so hard for. I know that both of you have put in a tremendous amount of effort to perform and make sure what everyone was seeing looked great and beautiful. How did you handle the problematic elements in the play, like the homophobia?
We had a lot of conversations as production to kind of like say why the homophobia was in the script and why what role it played in highlighting these characters' flaws and like inflammatory nature. So yeah, navigating that was a little difficult, but it proved to be a part of something bigger. If that makes sense.
How do you think like the homophobia and the hurtful elements that are throughout the show helped or hurt the show altogether? Do you think that like how did it push the storyline along?
Well, I think that like the characters' inflammatory natures kind of are the point. Like they're supposed to be super harsh and super like dramatized, is that the word? Super like out there to kind of point like hold a mirror up to the audience to be like this is the kind of things that people are saying, like this is the worst that people could be, but like there are still people like this. And so that kind of like helps push the metaphors of identity, because like obviously Matt, who's like the most homophobic character in the show, is queer identifying in some way, but he can't accept it, so he feels the need to act in this inflammatory and horribly unacceptable way. But that is a tool of the playwright to kind of like hold a mirror up to the audience and be like, people act like this because they are so repressed.
Okay, we were just joined by Evan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Evan Piccolo, and I played Matt. Speaking of most homophobic character.
I'm glad that you were able to join us. Would you guys be able to speak about the cartoons in the background? They looked absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, those were all done by Shai Sims, the cartoonist for the show.
Yeah, they all are fantastic, and like the backgrounds, and then I got the backgrounds from her and I was like, wow, these are really cool. And then I started implementing them in the stream with everyone's boxes, and then we started doing green screens, and it took a little while for us to nail down the green screens, and in the end there's a few hiccups, but overall they look really good, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. And for the comics, we actually, when this was going to be a live stream show, we were actually going to cue them live. So per line, every frame would have been go, go, go. It would have been, that way it would line up with the lines of the show, and that would have been really great. A lot of fun to do. And then
for the actors, even though you weren't able to see the cartoons in the background, do you think that knowing that they were there helped you get into the zone and perform?
Yeah, no, completely. The amazing work done by Shy with the backgrounds and the cartoons was we were able to see a screen shared version, so a very small little box at the bottom of our computer. So you can see it, and kind of just like seeing all the transitions and seeing like the just it was so cool. It was really so cool. And for like the longest time we had been working with like eyeline match and like positioning, and then to see it with that combined with the cartoons in the backgrounds really like blew my mind. I thought it was super cool.
For Evan, how did you handle the scenes of physical violence in an online setting? How do you show that characters menace through the screen?
Yeah, since having to be all virtual, there was no physical violence that I actually got to do, so that all had to come vocally pretty much, and seeing how far I could kind of push the sounds of anger
Speaking of sounds, were there ever any noise complaints from around, like from people that were near you?
Extremely. Um, so I had ended up, my roommates got COVID and I had to go quarantine in Fennell Hall. And the first day that I got there, I immediately had to join rehearsal and I immediately start doing, it was the party scene where I started doing my screaming and I had UP called on me because someone thought there was some kind of abuse going on in my room as soon as I got to quarantine and yeah, mid rehearsal too. So that was an awkward experience.
Sammy Digamus asks, Anastasia, you worked as both an actress and a dramaturg on the show. How was that experience like?
Oh, it was amazing. It felt like I was entrenched in the show long before some of the other actors were because when you're in the dramaturgy team, you do kind of have to do a lot of work pre-production, and that kind of gave me a new perspective on all of the characters and their kind of like wants and desires, and just the context of the show. And it really helped me find who CB Sister was at the core.
Do you think that also working as a dramaturg helped you create like a bond with other actors in the performance or other crew members who might like know that like, oh, Anastasia knows or might know what the answer to this question is. I'm going to go talk to her.
Yeah, totally. There were kind of moments in rehearsal, even later on in the process, where actors were like, "Oh, I have a stupid little question," and I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about it for like 20 minutes because we have the time." So stuff like that really helped build a bond with me and the cast.
So I see I have a question here about what did I find most interesting about being a dramaturg on this show. What I found being most interesting as being a dramaturg was just really being able to dig into the show and understand the context behind it and some of the history that or like things that were mentioned throughout, like the Salem witch trials or something like that. Just learning so much about things that you wouldn't have typically connected with this show, learning about them in a deeper sense, and then just being able to provide context for the actors and the crew and everything, and just being able to, you know, help people understand things and answer questions that ever popped up. So we have another question. What do you think the future is for theater through the pandemic? Will we stay online or be back in person? Do you think maybe a sort of hybrid might happen next?
You know, I think it might be hybrid for a while. You know, I'm sure probably for a while it's going to be still online, but as things start settling down and the world gets better, I think we'll probably do hybrid. There'll be like opportunities where maybe things will be live streamed from the theater. So maybe you have your cast all there and they're all safe and protected, but maybe you don't have the big audiences anymore for a while. I mean, eventually we'll all get back and be able to do that. But I think it'll be cool to see shows live streamed or pre-recorded, released on DVD. I don't know what the plans are. I guess that'll depend on different theaters and what they want to do, but I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities moving forward, and it'll be up to us to innovate and say, what do we want to do?
Okay, we have another question from Kuvar Bhatnagar, who says, was there a particular moment or scene that really let you connect with your character?
I could go first. I felt super connected during one of the first times me and Nick, our CB, did Brothers and Sisters. I just felt like we had a hard time getting to like the sibling dynamic because I personally am an only child, so I don't have any experience with that. So it was hard for me to like understand what a sibling relationship really is. So when we got to like the cutting it, like the closer rehearsals got to ending, that scene kind of seemed like it lagged a little bit. And then we read it one day when we were in our spaces and in our costumes, and it just felt like it clicked. And it felt like we really just kind of like became siblings in that moment. If that sounds a little wacky. But yeah.
I don't think I really have a scene where I connected well. Gonna be honest, I had a lot of trouble connecting with Matt. I feel like we're too opposite. I feel like there's always something when you get a character, there's that something that you can grab onto and relate to and from yourself to put into the character, but I just could not find any of that. But I always enjoyed doing the first scene where I was introduced where swine live, just because it's fun to be an annoying teenager.
In finding it difficult to connect to your character, were there any like things that you were like, what type of things were maybe you trying to grasp onto just to make it feel that like you could portray this character accurately? Did you have like any issues with portraying such like harsh character that as Matt is?
I'm not like issues of the subject was too difficult. It was really just that
Yeah.
personal barrier because I still wanted Matt to be a fleshed out human being, but I just didn't get where the overlap of Evan and Matt was, you know?
Can you talk about the costumes? It's unusual to see so much costume detail in a virtual production.
I could speak on that one as someone with many costumes. The costume crew really outdid themselves. They were working like day in, day out to get these costumes done, like down to the wire. And there were some like last minute adjustments. Like, I know personally for myself, when I was in the like gangsta outfit, was supposed to have like long leather sleeves, and then they were like, "We're gonna scrap that and just give you patches because that looks cooler." We decided to do that, and so I think the costumes really were like blew out of the park, and kind of helped me personally connect with CB's sister on like a deeper level because her whole thing is changing identities. So of course she has all these like crazy awesome costumes, and I personally thought they just did some really awesome work, crazy awesome stuff.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and it is from Steve Mazzacone. He says, "Hi, Matt, Evan, and Anastasia. Great job. Question for any of you. The original cartoon has this pensive quality on life. While working on it, what felt like the message the playwright wanted people to think about?"
I could hop on that first. I think that Burt V. Royal really wanted to hammer home the idea like you don't finding your identity is something that takes time and takes experience in life. So like CB was not the same at the beginning of the show as he was at the end, and he still doesn't know his identity because that is a really hard thing to navigate. So finding your identity was kind of like the core that I personally took from the show.
How do you think that a show like this might help other people trying to figure out what their identity is?
I think it's helps illustrate too that identity's a story of growth, of you grow, you change, and that's normal.
I also think it's important that it shows that everyone has different identities. You know, even Marcy and Trisha, you know, they're completely different, but they can still be friends. You know, they have similarities, but they're so very different characters, and they're independent of each other, which I think is important.
I think that also kind of like in congregation with finding your identity, the show talks about like overcoming your niche, if that makes sense. Because I feel like the idea of the Peanuts growing up was kind of like them coming into themselves rather than being a character, which I think is was super interesting and also comes in with the finding your identity stuff.
All right. That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us at Dog Sees God by Bert V. Royal, presented by SUNY Oswego Theater. My name is Rachel Monson, and I want to thank our panelists for their hard work and insight today. Thank you so much.